I wanted to discuss today my favorite reads of 2023. These are like some of my favorite videos to watch. This one here was my last read of 2023. Technically finished it in 2024, but I'm still putting it in my list of favorite books because it was so good. Bunny by, I just watched an interviewer say her name Awad, so I'm sorry if that interviewer said it wrong and now I am. It is such a fever dream. It's grotesque, it's gory, it's very disorienting. There were times while I was reading this that I felt genuinely nauseous because I was so disoriented with what was going on, but in the best way. Scholarship student who prefers the company of her dark imagination to that of most people, Samantha Heather Mackey is utterly repelled by the rest of her graduate fiction writing cohort at New England's elite Warren University. A clique of unbearably saccharine but sinister rich girls who call each other Bunny seem to move and speak as one. But everything changes when Samantha receives an invitation to the Bunny's fabled smut salon and finds herself inexplicably drawn to their front door, ditching her only friend Ava in the process. As Samantha plunges deeper and deeper into the Bunny's world and begins to take part in their monstrous experiments, the edges of reality begin to blur. Soon her friendships with Ava and the bunnies will be brought into a deadly collision. I don't even think a synopsis can do this book justice. It's genuinely so good. Definitely one of my favorite books I have ever read in my life. And I'm currently reading Rouge by Mona and I'm really enjoying it, but like Bunny is just 10 out of 10. I think this is such a gorgeous copy of this book and I could not put this one down. We have Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Such a beautiful novel about what it means to be human. The book was different than I was actually initially expecting it to be. I thought it was just gonna kind of be like a scientist in a lab who creates a monster, but it's so much deeper than that and honestly doesn't really take place in a lab that much anyways. Frankenstein is the scientist. I always thought Frankenstein was the monster. As you can see, I saved almost every page of this book. I think Mary Shelley is one of the most brilliant writers I have ever read in my entire life. It's into those themes of man versus nature and when we try to play God and kind of like humanity and science. It plays into, you get to kind of see this monster experience the world for the first time. Very heartbreaking. It's very beautiful. Okay, I was worried this book was going to be way too overhyped, but The Secret History by Donna Tartt also saved a lot from this book, and it's very popular in the literary community, and I find people can tend to kind of love it or hate it, but I found while I was reading it, I felt like, oh, there's not too much happening. Like a lot of major things happen, but so much of the book is just like their day-to-day life. But I think about, this is like my Roman Empire, I think about these characters all the time. This book left such an impact on me. I just thrifted The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, and so I'm definitely going to read that one soon. Loved The Secret History. She is such a brilliant writer. I think she wrote this book for 8 or 9 years, so you know that so much love and care went into it. Under the influence of a charismatic classics professor, a group of clever, eccentric misfits at a New England college discover a way of thought and life, a world away from their banal contemporaries, but their search for the transcendent leads them down a dangerous path beyond human constructs of morality. The book is so chaotic, so much happens. I wouldn't really classify it as a thriller, although it has themes of a thriller such as murder, which happens on the first page, so no spoiler there. There's times where you feel horrified, angry, sad. Some people have said that they didn't enjoy the book because every character is just so insufferable, but that's definitely just the point. Take a little break from novels and go to this poetry and prose collection by Dakota Warren, who is the person that got me into classic literature and dark academia, but especially classic literature. I had always kind of attempted to read classics, but I never felt like my reading level was quite there, so I'm definitely going to be making a whole video about accessible classic literature because I think it's important to kind of start small and work your way up. But this is a beautiful collection. It's visually appealing, it's stunning. On Sun Swallowing is a sweet and bloody collection of poetry, prose, and journal extracts dancing in the spaces between girlhood and godhood, satin and switchblade, salvation and damnation, philosophy between cotton sheets, existentialism cross-legged on the shower floor, cheap cigarettes, even cheaper wine, and an oath to reach hell by midnight and be home in time for work in the morning. The artwork in here, not have a physical copy copy, but I wanted to kind of put a variety of different books in here, and I listened to the audiobook Love, Pamela. I absolutely adored it. Her writing style is exquisite. She is a beautiful writer. I think no matter what opinions you had of her in the past, you should definitely read this to kind of like hear about her life, empathize with her. I never really had an opinion on Pamela Anderson, to be honest. I was pretty indifferent to her. Related a lot to her narration style, the romanticization of life and sometimes even men and relationships, and her love for animals and the activism she does for that. She's an incredible woman. I think that she has been quite misunderstood in the media. That often happens to very beautiful women, is they are not looked at necessarily for what's on the inside. If I were to re-listen to it, I think I would put it on and fall asleep to her voice. I find her voice so soothing. The Drowning Woman by Robin Harding. I actually posted about this book on TikTok and the author herself commented on it. I'm very picky with thrillers because I love all things dark and creepy. I remember I was at a cottage with my friend and everyone was talking and I could not physically put it down. Like, I had to know what happened, and very rarely does a book do that to me where I can't put it down. Even with Bunny, for example, I stayed up late just to finish it, and that's how you know you really like a book. The Drowning Woman, as I was reading it, I was like, okay, there's a lot of twists and turns happening and this author could really drop the ball depending on the ending, and I feel like she absolutely exceeded my expectations. Potentially the most horrifying, claustrophobic book I have ever read, The Collector by John Fowles. I believe this is also now kind of considered a classic. I saved a lot from it, but what I would really recommend about this book is it's not just a scary book about a man who kidnaps a woman, because it's about a man who collects butterflies and then decides he wants to collect this woman he's infatuated with. She has no idea who he is until she's kidnapped by him. The book randomly flips to her perspective halfway through, and then you go through the whole story from her perspective, which I maybe would have found annoying because you just want to know what happens, but I actually loved reading the book from both of their points of view. But they have really interesting political discussions, just life in general and morality. So it wasn't just scary and haunting, it actually did have a lot of deeper undertones to it. I will not spoil anything about this book because I think you need to experience the plot for yourself for the first time. My now favorite book of all time, De Profundis, I think is how you say it, Oscar Wilde, which is essentially a very intense hate letter to his ex that he writes from prison. He's imprisoned for being gay. This, almost every single page of this is underlined. I'll be rereading this forever, and I highly recommend you read it too. It's so heartbreaking. If you've ever felt like you've been in a relationship where you've put a lot more into someone else than they've put into you, if you feel like you've been in a toxic or bad relationship, this book was also for you, because the person he was in love with was just not the best. Much I could say about this, but I think I would go on forever and ever. I just highly recommend that you read it. I also read Acting from a Spiritual Perspective and saved a lot of it, highlighted a lot of it. This made me fall in love with the craft of acting even more, as if my acting classes with my wonderful coaches didn't already. This cemented it, and I had this someone DM'd me and recommended this book. Very glad I read it. If you are into acting, or if you just are interested in the art form itself, this is an incredible book. It talks so much more about gifting your heart and your soul to the craft of it rather than just like fame, money, but it also does go into that, and it has a lot of helpful tips about getting an agent and submitting yourself. It's a little bit outdated because this was written before like social media and like the internet, I'm pretty sure, because it's more about mailing your headshots, for example. We all pretty much know the plot of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, so I won't bore you with it, but this is in my top few favorites because I absolutely loved the themes of like man versus science, morality, at what point can you still have a conscience about your own actions, what happens if we separate the good and evil within us, at like Gothic Victorian, I think it's Victorian era. Quite chilling. It's very good. Okay, those were my favorite reads from 2023. I only really started to get into classics and dark academia in August of 2023, so these are pretty much my favorites from 6 months. It's not from the whole entire year because I didn't really read a lot of fiction until I found classics. To make more videos like this, and I'm gonna have a lot more to choose from this year because I'm reading a lot more than I did last year, but I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you love all things books like me. Thank you for being here, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!